The industry day, it's such an important day for Bitcoiners and entrepreneurs to meet, share ideas, plan something together. Bitcoin is such a new technology. After just 15 years, we still have to understand all the new opportunities that Bitcoin will bring to young entrepreneurs that want to build something with Bitcoin or on top of Bitcoin. And this is exactly the topic of the next panel. It's called Building Bitcoin Businesses. Please welcome on stage Rockstar Dev, Anna Štrébl, Brada, Martin Čech, and the moderator of the panel, Dave Bradley. Big round of applause.
Hello. So we're going to be talking about building Bitcoin businesses today. This is a topic that I think many of you in the audience have some first-hand experience with, hopefully. And yeah, I mean, I think building Bitcoin businesses presents a really unique set of challenges that hopefully we can shed some insight into today. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to hand it just to my left to Rockstar here first. What are some unique challenges to building Bitcoin businesses?
I mean, there are a lot of challenges in building Bitcoin businesses, but also more broadly, building projects around Bitcoin. My own experience is not just with a Bitcoin business from 4 years at Strike, but really I established the Rockstar identity through BTC Pay server, thanks to Nicholas, who just gave great presentation. So that is more of a FOSS project. And there are like tons of unique challenges because Bitcoin changes so much by separating money from the state. So you need to like really adapt if you're like for-profit business, like there is a lot of compliance burdens. If you're a non-profit project, you need to take care of like publishing your releases in a way that community likes and adds to the FOSS creed of Bitcoin. So a lot of challenges. And I like touched on just a few, and I look forward in this panel to like dive more deeper into all of that.
Let's go down the line.
Yeah. So there are many challenges. So there are those who everybody probably knows about, the banking relations. So it's difficult to actually have a banking partner. Then it's even small things like marketing. So you're very often limited on Google, so you cannot just get a Google ad as a Bitcoin business. But basically, we're a B2B business, so we're trying to spread adoption by onboarding companies and allowing them to accept Bitcoin from their customers. And I think it's to some extent similar to individuals who are trying to onboard, get their friends to be into Bitcoin. And we're doing that, but on a company level. So we're trying to persuade companies who have nothing to do with crypto that it's a good idea to start accepting Bitcoin from their customers. And obviously, if you have a bad news that are coming out around Bitcoin or crypto in general, because people often put it into one bucket, then it's making your life pretty difficult.
Yeah, and so let's rephrase just a little bit too, like going down the line, what are some challenges, because I think we've all been involved in businesses, probably some startups as well, that were not Bitcoin related. What are some challenges that are unique to Bitcoin, would you guys say?
Should I go? Like when I think about the question, like the first answer in my mind is that it's, I would say, politically colored or philosophically colored, and it's not common in the usual business environment. So that would be my first answer. And the second is, and it was already mentioned, it is really young and dynamic environment. So there are some barriers like regulation and stuff like that. But we are on the B2C market. We are a Bitcoin onboarding company. So the biggest challenge for us, I think, is to actually explain people what the Bitcoin actually is and how to use it. And it's still a huge task for us.
Okay.
Yeah, I would also say it's a lot of fun and a lot of learning as well. Not to just complain that it's hard. It is. It is for sure. One thing that is particularly hard in Bitcoin is the volatility. Not just the price, but with the price volatility also comes like the number of customers is very volatile. So we have years where it's a really good business. It's usually like during the bull markets or shortly before or after that. Then there could be 1, 2, 3 years that are quite tough. So we need to plan ahead. We need to not to use all the money to buy Lambos and rather stay stoic, keep the savings for the years that are not so good and just think a little bit more long term, which I think is much different from most businesses where the volatility is just not as high.
Okay. So I think, and we'll broaden this not just to businesses but projects. I'm assuming you guys have all worked on businesses that were not Bitcoin related pre-Bitcoin. And I would like to hear if you guys have any thoughts on some assumptions that you learned from other businesses that were not true once you got into the Bitcoin industry, and what worked in traditional tech or traditional business that doesn't work in Bitcoin. And anybody who thinks of this first can start.
No, to me, really the biggest thing in near future will be whether your business can generate bigger return than just holding Bitcoin generates. And that changes everything because, this fiat businesses that are running right now, like in this high velocity trash economy we're all part of, is just, you need to be as close as to money printer, ideally in the US, and you can get funded for all kinds of, terrible stuff. And it's more of a, not whether your business generates real value, but whether you can generate the best smoke and mirrors for, not even market, but for politicians that are, giving out funds so that you're the best compliance company, I don't know, like chain analysis or whatever. So that's to me like the biggest thing that Bitcoin changes. And what I love especially is that there are now Bitcoin-focused investment VC firms that literally in their thesis have that. It's just like our goal is to outpace returns of Bitcoin, and let's see if they're successful.
Yeah. Do you guys have anything to add to that?
So generally, I think it's hard to compare any other business to what we're doing because, especially in crypto payments, I see that we're really at the beginning. So it's entirely different from my experience with the business before. And it would even overlap with the first things I was saying. So in a normal business, you rely on things that are standard. It's normal to work with a bank. It's normal to put out some ads. It's normal to speak about your business and not be worried about regulation because regulation is quite clear. But then in Bitcoin business, you're like an astronaut. So you're going out there and you're just discovering completely new things. You're discovering completely new problems. But then obviously it's, business is not where the path is already paved. So that's why it's such a great business because not everybody will go into this and be able to solve quite a challenging environment that there is around building a Bitcoin business.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, guys?
Like to me, the majority of the building business parts are the same compared to any other industry, but there are some aspects, and probably the biggest challenge or the difference might be who will be the customer in the near future or midterm future. Because, for example, before Bitcoin, I worked in private equity, concretely travel, and we knew that in 3 years the customer will be pretty much the same, the people will be traveling. But what's gonna be Bitcoin in 3-5 years? And who are we targeting right now? Like the Bitcoin maximalist, ETF enthusiast, or whatever. I don't know what will be the market in the future, and it's hard to predict and actually to navigate the business like you are heading into.
Yeah, I actually had a very similar thought that in businesses I worked before, it was fairly not easy, but doable to do research, get the data, understand what the customer wants, and then build it and deliver it. And it's always a bet, but in Bitcoin world, it's so much harder to actually get the right product. Like we were probably the first company in Czech on any coin we introduced Lightning Network, and the research said that the Bitcoiners love Lightning Network. Everybody told us, yes, we want Lightning Network, but when we implemented it, the usage was like far below what we expected. And it's growing, it's good, it needs time, but it was like one of the many lessons where we learned that even the customers sometimes don't really understand what they want because it's new for everybody. Like, there is no one to blame, it's new for us, it's new for customers. And it's been ongoing story with every single thing we build. Sometimes it works great, sometimes it's just a bet that didn't work, and that's life really in Bitcoin development.
Yeah. So I would say, first of all, that someday our customers are going to be everyone, right? It's a matter of like predicting who the next round of customers are. And I think it's interesting to look at who those customers are now and how we're having to interact with them and how do we acquire customers as Bitcoin businesses and what kind of products are they actually going to want? Because sometimes what Twitter tells you they want as a product is not what people actually want to use, like you mentioned. And I've found over the years that the Bitcoiners can be good and bad customers because there's a lot of people who've accumulated some wealth and have some spending power in Bitcoin, but Bitcoin also creates this low time preference where we're all cheap, right? Like we've spent a lot of Bitcoins on our Bitcoin businesses, and that makes you really cheap. So my question is, are Bitcoiners good customers?
Yeah, I'm not cheap, Dave. but yeah, I get what you're saying, and you also said like most of the time, like it's not what Twitter says. It's true. Like it's almost always, Dave. But one really positive example I want to give when it comes to Bitcoiner-focused business was one of the first big users of BTC Pay server, ironically named Cheap Hair, but their Bitcoin customers were their best customers. Like they would always, buy first-class tickets for the flights, and they're like loyal customers, repeat customers. So to me, it's really about identifying the niche. I mean, when you look at, for example, CoinKite with their hardware wallets, or even Trezor or Ledger, you know that like the repeat loyal customers that you have, they're great customers, and it's more about identifying the right target group and catering to it with specific products. And to me, if you do that well, like you're going to build a great business.
Yeah, for us, Bitcoiners are definitely good customers. They're very loyal customers. So we have many cases where somebody who owns Bitcoin, they want to build a house, and they often push the company, for example, the construction company, to accept Bitcoin, and the company has to come to us and say, look, like we need to accept Bitcoin somehow. And this is really what often happens with new clients. But to be entirely honest, this is quite a niche thing. Our business couldn't run on Bitcoiners who use Bitcoin just because they love it, or because it's their philosophy. So this makes us happy, but we have to focus on segments where paying with Bitcoin actually solves a problem. And the best segments to focus business-wise are the segments where you would have a monopoly of banks or credit card associations, and the industries are really having big problems with payments. And they need Bitcoin. And to be honest, they don't care about Bitcoin whatsoever. They don't care about the technology or what's like stands behind Bitcoin, but they just need to use it. And I think those are actually that's the best business case for Bitcoin.
Yeah, and I would also encourage the companies that can't necessarily make that product market fit right away, is just start with Bitcoin marketing. Like a sprinkle a little of Bitcoin into, whatever is your core business model, and see where that takes you. And to me, it worked well for a lot of companies, and not even companies, but football teams like Botev. They're here at the conference, so you can talk with them and learn from their example, like how did sprinkling a little bit of Bitcoin into the mix, worked for them.
I agree with Anna mentioned that the Bitcoin customers are loyal, but at the same time, I think they are very opinionated, at least the segments or cohorts that has been in the market early. So sometimes it's kind of difficult to work with them because for some it's too much and for the other it's too low. So to maneuver between them might be a little bit difficult. But I think that in the future, potentially in the near future, the more the Bitcoin get into wider and wider audience, the differences between retail customer and Bitcoin customer will actually decrease, and it will be the same customer segments, I think.
Yeah, I would add that Bitcoiners are getting much knowledgeable in general. I can see the big shift in just a few years, like when we started 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when somebody bought Bitcoin with us and we asked for the wallet address. Some customers would send us their physical address because they just didn't know what to do. It was like Main Street, Prague, number 5. And it took a lot of explaining just a few years ago. And now it's a non-problem that's solved. Nobody does that anymore, and people actually use hardware wallets so much, like vast majority of Bitcoin that we sell just doesn't stay with us. And so I would say, great job, guys. And it was just a few years, so I think the space is moving really fast. And one thing that I'm especially optimistic is the young generation, because Bitcoin is so natural to them. It's much harder for people like me, like I'm almost 40, and my parents are just, it's so hard for them to accept the mindset change. But when you grow up in that, we can see like teenager customers that they just treat Bitcoin like a very normal thing. They don't think about it as something new or something special. It's just something that's been there for quite a long time for them, and it's very natural.
Yeah. So I'm going to sum up a little bit of what you guys said and add my own take on this. I heard from a couple of you that Bitcoiners are very loyal customers, and I think that's very true, but I would add that you have to earn their business, and that tendency toward low time preference leads Bitcoiners to seek out higher quality products and have less tolerance for low quality products or products that are trying to like a cheap, simple way to market. So I think Bitcoiners are less susceptible to marketing to an extent, less susceptible to gimmicks, and harder to get as customers. But once you get them, they can be extremely loyal and valuable customers, I would say. And that kind of leads in, I hope, to the next question, which, I imagine many of you have probably had some experience or exposure to raising money in the Bitcoin space. And I would love to hear about what your experiences are like. Does the same hold true? Do the venture capitalists in the Bitcoin space value those same kind of things? We've, like what Rockstar was saying, we've built this economy in the world now where it doesn't really matter how useful or valuable your business is necessarily. It matters how close you are to the money printing spigot and who you know and what kind of image that you can present. And my hope is that within the Bitcoin space, we're finding that venture capitalists are a little bit more linked to reality and building businesses that hopefully will someday come to the crazy goal of making more money than they spend, right? So what do you think?
Yeah, well, it's going in the direction of everything divided by 21 million, my friend Knut says, and pushes. My experience with most of the people that are investing in building Bitcoin businesses, all of them are trying to get into this asset class, because when you look at it, Bitcoin is the best performing asset class for last, what is now 15 years. NVIDIA competition, pretty fun to see that. But really, people and like investors are trying to get into Bitcoin, get exposure to Bitcoin, because they understand that politicians will just keep printing money, and that's it. If you think, will the price of Bitcoin be higher BTC USD rate in 5 years than it is now? I mean, can anybody in the audience raise hand if they think it will be less? Like, it won't, because politicians will just keep printing money. And again, people investing in Bitcoin, to me, like all of them, they want to be part of that story. And then most of them are in it for really good reasons, because they recognize this madness of fiat cannot continue indefinitely. It needs to be tapered off. And I don't think it will be like a switch, like 1 and 0, but it will be gradual. We will defund through Bitcoin. We will defund these insane programs. It's not that governments will enforce regulation on Bitcoin. It's like Bitcoin will enforce regulation on politicians and government and ensure like fiscal responsibility, because you will not be able to just tax and take money from some people. So to summarize, to me, it is like most of the investors, absolutely, like they're looking to invest in building good businesses, and eventually, like I also see every business will be a Bitcoin business. So
and to add one thing, does that make it harder to raise money from Bitcoin investors?
I mean, in my experience, not really, as long as you can show the value. Because a lot of investors, it's not even about immediate return. It's about more being a part of the mission. So if you can show that your business is doing that, you're going to raise money. And they're not only like mission is foundation, but then you look at all the companies that were early in Bitcoin and even, unfortunately, crypto, like Coinbase. Returns are phenomenal. And I think when you combine the two, you get the reason why so many people are investing now.
Is that your advice then? Invest in Coinbase?
No, don't invest in Coinbase, but invest in new Coinbase, invest in businesses that will be like Coinbase in 10 years.
So then it depends whether it's, because we're saying like Bitcoin investors versus VCs, right? So I actually don't have any experience with Bitcoin investors, like specifically Bitcoin investors. We do have a VC in Confirmo, and we have great experience with that. It's one of the big local VCs. But I don't think it was difficult to actually get the investment, because Confirmo is a stable, profitable business. But the harsh reality that probably nobody here would want to hear is that VCs, they like rocket ships, and Bitcoin is no longer a rocket ship for them. So if you're in a crypto space and you have some really cool Web3 project, then often a lot of VCs will get swayed by that because they're looking for something very sexy and very flashy. So I cannot really say how hard it is to get an investment as a Bitcoin business, but I would say, at least in the crypto space, my guess would be that other like Web3 projects might be in a better position from a big VCs to get an investment than Bitcoin one.
Okay. I think this is exactly what we're talking about, where there are businesses that are linked to reality, and there are businesses that are linked to the fantasy of money printing. And that's the line there where the VCs that are the traditional VCs that are maybe still more excited about the next big Web3 thing, those are it's no different than being excited about the next big AI startup or whatever is going to be funded by the money printer next. And I'm curious to see from you guys if you've seen any difference between those two things. I don't know if you have any experience with like the Bitcoin VC side or looking for funding as a Bitcoin company specifically. And have you guys seen any delineation between VCs? Essentially, are VCs becoming more rational and more tied to reality because of Bitcoin?
So we are neither VC funded, but previously I worked in VC segment, so I have some experience. We wanted from the beginning to keep the independence, but at the same time we know that we cannot be that fast as the competition that is VC funded. And because we are on the B2C retail market, we want to onboard the people, so we need to acquire them first. And as you mentioned, it might be quite difficult to persuade them that the product is high quality. And from my perspective, I see many competitors or other Bitcoin businesses that are VC funded, and they are just like throwing money out because it's the game of the venture capital. Either get the traction really quickly and print the money or go bankrupt, but nothing else. It's a binary game, and that's not the game we want to play. But we know that it's they have unfair advantage in this. But in the long perspective, I hope that the quality will deliver.
Yeah, I actually have some experiences from talks. Like our products are also not VC funded; we are all self-funded. But we did enter some talks that were more like initiated from the VC sides. And one thing that is particularly hard is actually pricing the company and just getting the estimate, because there are a lot of factors. Some of them is hard data, some of them is the vision and the ideas that is hard to quantify. And it always was the deal breaker for us that we saw the Bitcoin business as long-term profitable thing that will be the next big thing. And the VCs were looking at it more like, yeah, it's a nice startup, but it's super risky. And we don't know if it's going to be here in three years, which is fair enough. It's a rational point, but I think it shows the difference between our point of view, where we were able to risk it all and just go all in and just see what happens, and VCs just wanted to minimize the risks. Maybe we just didn't talk to the right VCs, because they were not from the Bitcoin space. They were from the traditional e-commerce space, and their point of view was just so different that we ended up with 10 times difference between the prices, and there was no way we were going to meet in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually when VCs are doing due diligence on your company, and so that they see whether to invest or not. You also need to do due diligence on those VCs. And if it's not already a Bitcoin VC, very unlikely you can orange pill them. You need to leave that to Michael Saylors of the world and people like that will orange pill them and get them to the right side eventually. Right, Dave?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. I think the venture capital industry as a whole is very close to the money printing spigot. So a lot of the returns that they've seen over the last 20 years especially have come not from the fact that they've funded really profitable, useful businesses, but they've funded this never-ending churn of funding rounds that build on other funding rounds that build software that nobody really wants, that generates stats rather than profits. And I'm hoping that there's enough Bitcoin-focused VCs out there that we're going in another direction. But I've heard from you guys that you've got some self-funded businesses, and to all of you, feel free not to answer this question, but I'm curious as to whether or not you guys have put your own money into your businesses, and if you have, has that outperformed Bitcoin?
Yeah, so I invested into Confirmo. I also invested into Bitcoin, so my Bitcoin is safely stored on my Trezor, and Confirmo has a nice month-to-month growth. So I didn't actually ever thought of a comparison, which one is better investment, but I'm equally happy about both of them.
I also do have stake in Attendees, but the answer is that we keep majority of our funds in Bitcoin actually. So we grow with the market, and just the portion we need for the operational expenses we convert into fiat, into dollars. So in a way, I cannot lose this investment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I put a little bit of money in our company when we started it, so I'm 50% owner, but it's hard to estimate whether it was better investment than Bitcoin. Like in a nominal value, I think it is. It's not. I'm not there for short-term money. It's been so much rewarding in all the other aspects, in building the company, getting the product to grow, meeting the customers, learning new things. So I think it's not just about the nominal value of the money, but in these terms, it was the best decision of my life.
And Dave, I can't believe I missed this when you said like invest in Coinbase, right? Like no, invest in MicroStrategy. And, yeah, MSTR, get that.
Yeah.
If you don't have exposure directly to Bitcoin, but yeah.
So when I invested in my first Bitcoin business, my own Bitcoin business, and would have been like 2013, there was no like MicroStrategy or anything that I could invest in. And the shocking number that I have is I spent 120 Bitcoins on the furniture for my store. And you know, anybody who's been in Bitcoin long enough has horror stories like that. And to your point, Martin, I definitely agree that you know, I got way more value personally from starting a Bitcoin business, and all the skills that I've learned and the people that I've met and everything else that's immeasurably valuable. But from a purely financial perspective, I would definitely have more purchasing power if I had never been in the Bitcoin industry, if I had gone and been a plumber for the last 14 years and just put all of my money into Bitcoin. So my next question, I guess, for you, all of you guys is like, is it worth it? Is it a good idea to start a Bitcoin business?
I mean, no regrets. No regrets on that, because that leads to Bitcoin derangement syndrome. If you look back and you're like, hey, you spent 20 Bitcoin on a T-shirt and whatnot. Because it's more about embracing that journey of Bitcoin and contributing to Bitcoin. I said it on this stage last year. The more you contribute to Bitcoin development, the more Bitcoin will contribute to your own development. And if anyone is interested in learning more about that, just approach me after this panel, and I can tell you, like, it's all about no regrets, continuing to invest, continuing to enjoy the journey, and just going forward, not looking back on Bitcoin that you could have held, because, yeah, you'll just have regrets.
Yeah, definitely for me, I cannot really imagine a better job than I am doing. And I can't even imagine many other sectors where you would have such a chance to be at the very beginning with some technology. And in Bitcoin payments, we're really at the beginning, and it's really unique, I think, to an extent that we do not appreciate. And I'm always reminding the team that this is actually the time when people, like 10 years from now, will be saying, like, we were so lucky to be at the very beginning of this. And the time is right now in Bitcoin payments.
I think in general, building a business is a very rewarding experience. You can learn so much on this journey. But most of the aspects of building business and building a Bitcoin business are actually the same. It's a work with people, it's a finance, operations, stuff like that. But if you, on top of that, love the idea of Bitcoin, so that's a success.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's about building a Bitcoin business or building a business. I think the most important thing is that building something useful. And building a Bitcoin business doesn't mean that it will just succeed because Bitcoin will succeed. Right? The business still needs to deliver the value. It needs to be built right. It's a tedious work. It's never just one idea and over the weekend it's done. It's long-term work, so that's what we are there for, that we try to look for things that are actually useful. If you manage to find something that is useful and is built on Bitcoin or with Bitcoin, I think that's an amazing combo. But it's still a challenge like any other business.
Yeah. So we got about 4 minutes left here. I'm going to ask each of you no more than a minute. Do you have any advice for somebody who wants to start a Bitcoin business?
I mean, as my fellow panelists said, build a business. Yeah, build something that's useful, something that creates more value than it takes in, because that will be the only way to survive in what is to come. Because this fiat money printer will be dismantled eventually, and you will need to take the value but produce more value. And for me, anyone just needs to look deep in themselves and see what is that inner voice telling you, what is the value that you are supposed to create in this world. And if you don't have idea, do what I did, join someone else like Nicholas. Nicholas was pretty passionate about obsoleting BitPay. So you see what is the mission of someone else that really resonates with you, and then join, help, not only with Nicholas, but Jack Mallers as well, joining Strike and helping realize that vision was very rewarding. So that's my advice. First, listen to your inner voice, see if you're an entrepreneur, you can build a business. If not, see maybe someone else's vision resonates more with you.
Yeah, I would say definitely think of the problem that you want to solve and go and try to solve it for other people, because you really need to be passionate about what you're doing. And then second thing, which is also great about building a Bitcoin business, is really to go and look for the uncharted areas, because there are still many out there. And obviously you're looking for unknown, so I cannot really tell you where to go. But the amazing is that there still are uncharted parts of business in Bitcoin.
My advice would be be entrepreneur first and activist second. Focus first of all on the execution part of the business. And I mentioned that in the previous answer: finance, people, operations, stuff like that. The activism is great, but it will not earn the revenue and it will not pay the people. So if you are not starting a non-profit, you need to be aware of building a business and all the aspects of that. So don't be idealists. And I think in a general media space, it's not like this. So maybe this is a contrarian idea, but I really think it's important to mention it's a business as any other.
Yeah, 2 ideas from me. One is, it's okay also not to be an entrepreneur. It's not for everybody. I think my best advice is know yourself and decide whether you are the right person to do the business, and it's okay if you don't. And second thing, if you decide to do, listen to feedback and iterate, because I have never seen a business that was just the first idea that was in someone's mind. It always takes time, and iterating. It was key to our business, and that would be my advice.
Amazing. So I'm going to finish us off with a quote here, which I think kind of illustrates what we've been talking about. This idea that Bitcoiners want high-quality things, that if you're going to build a business in the Bitcoin space, you must provide more value than you take in. This link to reality and this link to the real economy. This is a quote from Atlas Shrugged that I think is pretty important. It's from the Money Speech. If anyone hasn't read Atlas Shrugged or seen the Money Speech, look it up right away. The quote is, "Money is the material shape of the principle that men who wish to deal with one another must deal by trade and give value for value." And I think that is more important in Bitcoin because money works properly. And that's really the consequences of having money that works properly, is we have to actually run real businesses that do real things.